Picture this. You're a small business owner in the heart of America, and you've devoted years to building your dream, a charming toy company dedicated to crafting educational toys for children around the globe. You've triumphantly navigated the ups and downs of entrepreneurship until one day, the landscape shifts dramatically. Overnight, Trump's tariffs surge, sending your import costs through the roof, alienating your once loyal overseas customers, and threatening to unravel everything you've built. Then, just as you're grappling with this nightmare, your phone buzzes with breaking news. A court has declared Trump's tariffs illegal. Your heart races as messages flood in, a mix of hope and anxiety. What does this ruling mean for you? Is relief on the horizon? Will you see any money returned? Or is this yet another curveball in a relentless game? Now envision this moment from a very different perspective. A trade official in Brussels or a soybean farmer in Brazil reads the same headline, and their minds spin with questions. Is this a sign of renewed stability in global trade, or are we merely teetering on the edge of an even greater uncertainty? Today, on this What If episode of BrainFuel Reads, we are exploring what happens if the Supreme Court strikes down or upholds Trump's tariffs. This unfolding drama transcends legalities. It's a gripping narrative about power, law, and the everyday lives caught in the crossfire of political decisions. Stay with us as we explore the far-reaching consequences of this pivotal moment. Let's begin with the first possibility. The Supreme Court rules the tariffs illegal. This outcome would confirm what an appeals court already declared in late August: that Trump stretched emergency powers far beyond what the law allows. The 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, was never designed to hand the president sweeping control over tariffs. It was meant for targeted sanctions in times of national crisis, not broad trade policy. If the justices strike down the tariffs, they will essentially be saying, Congress makes trade law, not the president. For everyday Americans, this decision could feel like a breath of fresh air. Imagine walking through a grocery store where food prices finally start to ease, or ordering a gadget online and not paying an extra tariff-loaded premium. For our toy maker, it's life-saving. Costs come down, orders pick back up, and the dream that seemed lost is suddenly back within reach. But the story doesn't stop at relief. Because behind the scenes, the government has already collected hundreds of billions of dollars from these tariffs. Some estimates suggest half of that money might need to be refunded, a staggering blow to federal finances. Suddenly, Washington faces not just a legal defeat, but a fiscal earthquake. How do you repay billions, possibly over $1 trillion, back to businesses and importers? Do you raise taxes? Cut spending? Borrow more? Every option carries weight, and none come without pain. Globally, though, the reaction would be different. Trading partners in Europe, Asia, and Latin America might see this ruling as proof that America is still governed by the rule of law. It would signal that no matter who sits in the Oval Office, checks and balances still hold. Markets might surge in confidence, reassured that America's word in trade deals means something again. In a world increasingly skeptical of U.S. leadership, this could be the comeback of credibility. Now let's flip the story. What if the Supreme Court rules that Trump's tariffs are legal? The decision would send a powerful message: that the president can use emergency powers not just for war or sanctions, but to rewrite the rules of trade at will. For Trump, it would be a victory lap. For steel mills and oil rigs, it would be reassurance that their shield of protection remains. Workers in industries that have long felt crushed by foreign competition would breathe easier, knowing that their jobs are still sheltered behind tariff walls. But not everyone would celebrate. For families already struggling with higher grocery bills, nothing changes. Imported goods, from cars to electronics, stay expensive. And the small businesses relying on foreign parts or overseas customers, their struggles deepen. The message is clear: America first, but consumers pay the price. Globally, the stakes are even higher. Allies and rivals alike would take note that the U.S. president now wields near unchecked power over trade. It would confirm the fear that America's economic commitments can swing wildly from one administration to the next. Countries like China, Germany, and Mexico would move faster to forge alternative alliances, rewire supply chains, and insulate themselves from American unpredictability. The world economy begins to fragment, breaking into smaller blocks where trust in U.S. stability no longer holds. The long-term consequences could be profound. A precedent would be set, not just for Trump but for any future president, to wield tariffs as a unilateral weapon. The boundary between executive and legislative power would blur, and markets would learn to expect volatility not as an exception, but as the new normal. For Americans, the future looks a bit like two different paths, depending on whether tariffs stay or go. Let's consider the first scenario. If the tariffs are eliminated, there might be some short-term bumps along the way, but things could start to look much brighter in the long run. Imagine walking into a store and seeing lower prices on everyday items. Who doesn't love a good bargain? With cheaper goods at the checkout, families can stretch their budgets a little further, maybe even snagging that extra snack or two. On the business side of things, companies that rely on imports can breathe a little easier. They wouldn't have to constantly worry about sudden hikes in costs, allowing them to plan and invest with more confidence. But it's worth noting that not everyone would be popping champagne. Some industries that thrived under the protection of those tariffs, think steel workers, oil drillers, and manufacturers, might face a tough reality. They could find themselves grappling with the challenges of a more competitive market, and that might not be easy for them. On the flip side, if the tariffs remain in place, things might feel familiar, at least for a while. The industries benefiting from protection would keep going strong, and for now, jobs in those sectors seem secure. However, the burden doesn't just disappear. Families would still be feeling the strain of higher prices. That could mean cutting back on little luxuries or being more mindful about budgeting. Small businesses, too, would be stuck in a state of uncertainty, always looking over their shoulders to see what changes may lie ahead. Long term, if we continue down this path of protectionism, America might find itself stuck in a bubble, not fully engaging with the rest of the world. This scenario could lead to an economy where consumers unknowingly foot the bill for these tariffs every time they purchase something. Essentially, a hidden tax that affects us all. And then there's the rest of the world. What do these tariff decisions mean for our international neighbors? If the tariffs drop, it would send a wave of relief through many nations. Countries would feel reassured knowing that, despite all the chaos, the U.S. still values fair play and trade. This could spark renewed confidence in trade agreements, with nations once again looking to America as a pillar of stability. While it wouldn't fix every single issue facing the world, it would restore a sense of predictability that has been a bit hard to come by lately. Conversely, if the tariffs remain, the global situation could become increasingly shaky. Allies may start to wonder if they can trust the U.S. to uphold agreements, and rival nations could seize on the uncertainty to forge their own tighter alliances. Asia might double down on their regional trade agreements, while Europe might turn inward, focusing more on its own affairs. Latin America could play it safe, trying to adjust to the changing situation. Over time, this could lead to a new global reality where the U.S. is still strong but becomes less central to international business, essentially less reliable as a partner. And it's not just politicians and businesses who will feel the impact. Everyday people all around the world would notice the changes. For example, a shopkeeper in Mexico City might raise prices as imports from the U.S. become more expensive. A factory worker in Germany could lose shifts as demand for exports drops. Even a family in China could end up paying more for regular items because American tariffs can create a ripple effect through the supply chain. In essence, decisions made in America have a way of reaching across oceans and impacting lives everywhere. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected in this global economy, and the choices we make can have far-reaching effects on both our neighbors and ourselves.
So what if Trump's tariffs are ultimately ruled illegal?
or upheld. One path points to restraint, to balance, to the enduring power of law over politics. The other points to unbridled executive power, to protection at a price, to a world forced to adapt to America's unpredictability. For some, it's about sovereignty and strength. For others, it's about survival and cost. But for everyone, the stakes are real. Because when America redraws the rules, the tremors are felt in every household, from Main Street to far across the seas. This has been BrainFuel Reads, part of our What If series. If this breakdown made you think differently about the future, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as always, keep your brain fueled, because the world isn't slowing down. And neither should you.